like to call the Capital District Transportation Authority Board of Directors meeting to order. Thank you all for coming, and thank you to our special guests from United Way coming as well. We have a quorum, and we have one member on the phone as well. Hello, Mr. Schaefer.
Mark, you there?
Okay, we do have a quorum in the room. I'm going to seek approval, motion to approve the agenda. We're going to switch to go to the order in the executive session. I'm making that recommendation. Does anyone have any other edits or changes or
I'm on the agenda.
Okay, I'll second. Thank you. Any further discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The minutes of the January 30th, 2019 meeting. Seek a motion to approve those minutes as written.
So moved.
Thank you. I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. So the United Way is here to celebrate the achievements of the organization and our partnership with them. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us. This is Peter Gannon. Peter is the CEO of the United Way. In full disclosure, I'm a member of the board of the United Way. Peter was hired 9 months ago.
Hi, this is Mark Schaefer calling in, meeting.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark. Thank you.
And has done a great job in a very, very short period of time. I think you all know some of the issues that the United Way has faced, sort of transitionary issues over the last number of years. Those are all Peter's problems now to deal with. I almost said Peter's fault.
Yeah.
It's not his fault. And
Another year you can say it's my
yeah,
fault.
it's certainly
It's Jim's fault.
Jim Mulligan, gosh, Director of Development, Director of Outreach, Director of Campaigns, Director of Giving. Director of Carm, actually. Yeah, he keeps me straight. But Jim has handled the CDTA account for how many years?
More than 20.
More than 20. So he knows our organization and our people pretty darn well. And he's been a joy to work with and really one of the true nice people that I've met in my career. So the floor is yours, my friend.
Appreciate it, Carmen. I know I'll let you guys get back to your deliberations. I'm envious of a 7-person board. This seems very manageable. But we did bring some gifts for the board members. Sorry for everybody sitting on the perimeter.
Okay, excuse me, you can't call it a gift.
Token
appreciation. Coffee cup.
We can give you an invoice for them too. It's a coffee cup. But just like for really 60 seconds about this campaign, as Carm mentioned, I'm still relatively brand new. It's a complex organization, learning the ins and outs. And one of the first things, before I'd actually officially started, I came to CDTA to meet the workforce. I just happened to be at the office hanging out, and the staff was heading over, and I said, "I'll come with you." And I think we did a check that time, which was the end of last year's campaign. And what's happening nationally with our workforce campaign model is globally workforce campaigns are headed this way, right? Bigger donors are giving bigger gifts. Individual donors are giving less. That's what's happening at nonprofits right now. So that's makes what's happening here at CDTA even more special. 5 years ago, the campaign was at, I think, $16,000 was the number that I saw on the way over here. And in just that 5-year period, to see how it has grown, it's the largest growing, it's reversing the trend, and the growth is actually ridiculous. And what I attribute it to is culture. This organization, when I think of CDTA and I see the CDPHP cycles out there in the community, or I see, sponsoring special events, I think of this organization like many people do, and I think about community. It's in the DNA of this organization. When I think of our friends in labor and how they step up throughout the course of the campaign, they're the families in many of these instances that we're trying to help at United Way. And they walk the walk, they talk the talk. And so today, Carm, even though we printed it, Carm is going to present us with a check, which is the result of the campaign, $141,308, which is just, to think where you were 5 or 6 years ago, steadily growing, we're against all the trends. This represents an amazing impact on our organization and an amazing impact that we can now go forward and make on the community. So from all of us, the agencies we work with, our board of directors, which Carm is a part of, thank you guys so much for making this a priority, making this part of your organization's DNA. Yeah, so.
You want me to sign this?
Well, who's your fiduciary here? Because we're gonna take this right to the bank. We already got the money. We already got the money.
Take a picture of this.
Yeah.
Just make believe.
Yeah, like there's like just
Okay,
scooch
yeah.
over so you guys are on.
You wanna get in
Yeah,
here?
Georgie, get right up there.
Rows between.
Yeah, why don't you get in there?
Yep, middle.
Sure.
Trust me, the two of us.
Yeah.
Doesn't come any better or worse.
Thanks.
Want a fake sign? We hang these up in the office. So
You want to take some?
Yeah.
No, real sign, but fake check. And I will say, like, the Iowa region is small, Vinny. I see Corey, my friend, and then Denise. I think I used to watch your daughter in the after-school program at like Bout Hills 100 years ago. Your daughter's probably in her 20s now, right, or 30s?
30.
Yeah, I'm still in my 30s too. For a couple more months, but when I was reviewing who was on the board, I said, I remember Denise from back in the day.
Wow.
You know,
So before Pete leaves, you know, I just want you to know the United Way does work in the community that some of you know about, some of you don't. But, you know, there are some basic pillars, but the ones that I latch on to are the work that are done, because it's done with children, especially kids who don't eat. And it's the statistic in the capital region that blows me away, the number of young children who go without breakfast or without lunch or dinner during the day, and that the United Way fills that in, school districts fill that in. But the real problem is when they don't go to school, all that sort of support network goes away. And so when I first came in contact through the good people at the United Way, I thought it was, you know, well, it's in Albany, it's in Troy, it's an issue in our urban centers that we have to deal with. Well, it is, but it's also in Guilderland, it's in Niskayuna, it's in Clifton Park, of all places. So the problems are the problems, and we try to address them head on, but you know, every kid should have 3 meals. And want to find a way for me to give more money and tell me that every kid doesn't get 3 meals. And that works here with our people. And it works from cleaners to bus operators to CEOs, doesn't matter. Our per capita giving is the highest of any company in the capital region. That's what makes me proud. And that's why I go to board meetings, not because Jim's a great guy and Pete's an up and comer, which he is. It's because I think we're doing things that really matter in our community.
your team specifically, the most impressive statistic to me is that while your number has grown exponentially over a 5 or 6 year period to be one of our top performing campaigns throughout the region, like really ahead of you is only GE, Golub, Naval Nuclear, and that's on volume. Your employment count has remained steady for that 5 or 6 years, and the number that your people are investing and committing to this fight is growing. That's tells us we're doing our job well. So let you get back to work. Good seeing you.
See you too. See you too.
Nice to see you. You're old.
So while we're just getting back, I apologize for some of the hiccups here. We're trying a new approach. We're trying to tweak some of the ways we present information at the board meeting. So sorry that the packets weren't available, but we're trying to also display what's happening along the way through the board meeting. And we'll interject, photos and things like that, charts, graphs, as we go to try to make this a little bit more interactive. So give us a couple of months. If you like what you see, please tell us. And if you don't like what you see, please let us know, and just trying to make this a little bit more interactive and easier to engage in. So, make a few mistakes, it's usually how you get things done.
Thank you. We are going to move into our committee reports. I will be giving the Board Operations Committee report. We met on February 13th, 7:45 a.m. We discussed and agreed upon a scheduled meetings from May through September. There will be no meetings in July and August. You should all have a copy of that, and please let us know if you have any conflicts, and we'll move things around if need be. Trying to be flexible and accommodate everyone's schedule and just give you as much notice as possible. Lisa Morello provided an update on advocacy activities. The Jackson Lewis team is meeting constantly with state leaders to make the case for more transit operating assistance. Our ask is consistent with the NIFTA request for 10% more operating assistance for all non-MTA systems this year and for the next 4 years. The next meeting of this committee will be on Wednesday, March 13th, 2019 at 7:45 a.m. here at 110 Waterfleet Avenue. That concludes my report. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Okay. Mr. Cushon will be giving the Performance Monitoring and Audit Committee reports.
Yes, thanks, George. Yes, the Performance Monitoring Audit Committee met on February 20th here at 110 Waterfleet Ave. We had a brief meeting, as everybody heard, although the presentation by staff was excellent as always and very informative. There were no consent agenda items. The Audit Committee quarterly report was presented by Sarah Matros. The Revenue Audit Report was completed, which contained one recommendation that staff has incorporated. Upcoming audit items include the warranty process, Davis-Bacon, and prevailing wage audit, and the annual risk assessment. The internal audit charter was reviewed, including an independence and objectivity statement, and a written summary was provided. There were no items for the investment committee. There were several items in administrative discussion. Amanda Avery presented the Risk Management and Workers' Compensation Quarterly Report. Procedures require a quarterly review on the adequacy of the Risk Management Self-Insurance Account and Workers' Compensation Self-Insurance Account. The committee determined that both accounts are adequate at this time. Mike Collins presented the monthly management report. He reported that MRT met budget projections this month, but is 3% under budget for the year. Customer affairs continue to exceed monthly budget projections and are over budget by 4.5% for the year. Wages are 2.6% over budget for the year, but health insurance is under budget by 3.7% for the year. We paid back the $4 million line of credit for cash flow purposes and remain in an overall positive budget position. Chris Desney provided the monthly non-financial performance report. Total ridership was flat this month and down 5% for the year. On-time performance was at 74%, and there were 36 missed trips this month. Scheduled work was 82%. There were 11 preventable and 32 non-preventable accidents. Website page views were at 681,626. The committee did go into executive session. Amanda provided a report on pending litigation. There was no action taken. The next meeting of this committee will be on March 20th, 2019, noon here at 110 Waterfleet Ave. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Investment Committee report.
There is no investment committee report this month. The committee only meets quarterly, and so our next meeting is in March prior to the board meeting. There'll be a report sent out to the board following that.
Thank you very much. Strategic and Operational Planning Committee. Mr.
Okay.
Cushon, you have the floor again.
Yes, so we met February 21st at 12 p.m. here at 110 Waterfleet Ave. There were no consent agenda items. administrative discussion. Mike Collins presented fiscal year 2020 budget planning. The fiscal 2020 preliminary budget is projected to be $90.4 million. Revenue highlights include, based on current fiscal year projections and past history, we are proposing to reduce mortgage recording tax by $500,000. We may revisit this number in March if necessary. We are projecting a $500,000 increase in our customer revenue based on current universal access contracts and upcoming renewals. And we anticipate the state increasing our operating assistance by $3.7 million. Expense highlights include the wage increase projected to be $1.5 million based on the new labor contract. Workers' compensation costs are increasing as indemnity payments and scheduled loss of use awards grow as state law requires. There is a contractual pension increase for the employee pension plan. The professional and maintenance service lines have been increased because of adjustments to telecommunication, parking garage contracts, and CAD and ABL expenses. The purchase transportation line has increased 2% to account for CPI adjustments for the 3 transportation vendors. We still have some work to do, but our goal is to balance the budget with little or no impact to current service levels. We plan to present a balanced budget at the March 2019 committee meeting. There are no executive session items, and our next meeting is March 21st, 12 p.m. here at 110 Reed Ave. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Krishon. Any comments, questions?
On the budget, we continue to tug and pull. We're banking a bit on what happens at the state capitol. We'll give you a little bit of an update on that in my report. There's, a couple of the lines have some flexibility. Mortgage tax has some flexibility in it. What we project. At the end of the day, it'll probably also come down to how much of our 5307 aka federal funds we want to use for operations. Right now we're using around 70% for operations, and that was a theme yesterday throughout, actually the last 2 days, throughout our work at the state capitol, and having our state legislators understand that federal 5307 federal funding is intended for capital purchases. So every time we pull capital money in operations, we're borrowing from tomorrow to pay for today. So, continues to be a work in progress. Thanks to the planning committee, strategic planning committee, for hanging in with us and giving us a lot of time and a lot of input, a lot of suggestions. Probably have one more of a marathon meeting in March. Things will become clearer. The problem is I doubt we'll know for sure, the status of the state budget. So we'll have to probably be prepared to come back in April or May to maybe make an adjustment. But I think we're in pretty good shape. But a lot of moving parts.
Thanks. So, Community and Stakeholder Relations Committee, Ms. Baltinko.
Thank you. The Community and Stakeholder Relations Committee met on Friday, January 28th. That's not right at all. Yeah, that's what it's wrong. Last Friday. Don't remember what date. Thank you, the 21st, at 11:30 a.m. at 110 Waterfleet Ave. 20 seconds, thank you. There were no consent agenda items, so we had just 2 administrative discussion items on the agenda. The first was a presentation from Steve Ribner, the founder and CEO of FactFinders, who joined us at the meeting. He gave a presentation on what FactFinders does and how they've worked with CDTA for the past 30 years on customer surveying and doing what they can do to assist our efforts to better our customer experience. Data from FactFinders has been used for CDTA marketing and communications efforts with customers. It has helped to develop marketing campaigns and fine-tune customer wants and needs. It was a really nice presentation, so if anyone wants the material, I'm sure we can help out, give further example.
Okay, I thought I didn't get it out.
It was cool. I thought it was neat. A lot more detail in it than I realized that they were doing. And then Jamie Watson gave the monthly community engagement media relations report. Her report highlighted media outreach and community engagement outcomes over the last month. The next committee meeting will be held on Friday, March 22nd at 11:30 a.m. here at 110 Waterloo Ave.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Just a note, in all openness and honesty, I had a long talk with Doug Eady last week, just catching up. We really hadn't talked. Actually, I can't get to him because Dave's got his time and attention. As you know, they're penning a book, which I think is going to be, it's done. It's going to be, read by a lot of people in our industry. But we're just catching up on how we're doing. How the committee structure is, what's working, what's not working. And I just want you to know that I expressed to him surprise at how well this committee is functioning. And then sort of, you never know what's going to happen in your life. I think what it's done is it's made our staff better, because now our staff's looking at things in a little different way. We're asking, why do we do things, and how can we construct it into meaningful lumps and make reports to the committee and engage the committee. So I mean, the unintended consequences, I think I hope you see even better staff work. But it's been really surprising to me how well, because we all know that we've tried to get this jump started a couple of times, and for a lot of reasons, it just didn't seem to take hold. And we're not there yet. It's only been a few meetings, but Doug was happy to hear that, of course, because he pushed us a little bit, and sometimes we resisted. But it's worked, I think, as well as we could have expected. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Mark. I would like a copy of the fact-finders material.
Yep. We're going to send it to everybody, Mark.
Will do. Mr. Basile, moving the CEO report.
Yes, thanks. My report's in your packet. Luckily, the report to the committee chairs covers most of the report for me, which kind of takes me off the hook. So I want to talk a little bit about budget and advocacy. We talked about the budget and the planning committee report, and we're moving along nicely. But advocacy, as you can see in my report, especially the last couple pages, is pretty much, if it's not a full-time job, it's pretty close to it right now for me. Working with our partners at NIPTA, their lobbyists, people who do my job across the state. We've banded nicely over the last several years, and it really is an association of delivering a message to elected officials. And we work with Jackson Lewis, aka Lisa Morello and her team. I don't think a day goes by without I hear from Lisa, or Lisa hears from me, or one of her associates. And that really is sort of reinforcing the specific needs of CDTA. We sort of sit under the NIPTA message. The governor has included in the EBR, the executive budget request, 5.3% for transit systems, non-MTA transit systems. Actually, I take that back. For upstate transit systems, there are some transit systems that got 7.2% downstate. The NIPTA ask is for 10%, and it appears that we have the state and the assembly leadership understanding why we need 10%. 5.3% we've explained is status quo, barely pays the bills. 10% pays the bills and allows us to start to consider some of the things that we may want to do, like expansion of trunk routes, which we know is almost an immediate gain for us. Every time we invest in trunk routes, we see ridership increases. So we'd like to continue to do that, and the multitude of projects and activities that we talk about. So actually Monday night started our annual legislative days for NIPTA. We had board meeting. We met actually before the board meeting. We've done this now for 3 years in a row. We bring our collective lobbyists together. Most of us employ lobbyists, and the association employs lobbyists. And the first time we did it was interesting. We didn't really get a whole lot of talking because it seemed like everyone was afraid to share their secret. What are you talking about? Well, what are you talking about? We've now got them, I think, coalescing around the common theme and the common message. And the third meeting, Monday night, was much more open and much more productive. So we make progress every year in our advocacy efforts. And for those of you that advocate, on behalf of your organizations, it's not easy to stay together. It's easier sometimes to just go off and do your own thing. So you have to stay together while you advocate for the specific needs of your community. Yesterday, we started with a couple of panel discussions. I chaired one of the panel discussions, which was really stakeholders and advocates for transit. Dave was on the panel, and he talked about the work that APTA does and how the federal government and the state government sort of relate to each other. It's really a yin and a yang. And then we had another panel with all elected officials and leaders in the Senate and the Assembly. I can tell you that 7 years ago, 7 years ago, we were lucky to get legislators, never mind leaders. So we had from the Senate, the Transportation Committee Chair, and the Assembly, the Transportation Committee Chair, Chair of Corporations, and something, and what was the fourth?
Also the chair.
Chair of,
Same one.
same one, yeah, one in the Senate, one in the Senate. And they all had great things to say, and I think are very supportive. But rather than me telling, and then that was followed up by, we then spent the day at the Capitol at various meetings. And a lot of those were staffers. We spent a lot of time with the Senate and the Assembly, transportation and financing staff people to sort of dig into the numbers a little bit. But rather than me tell you what happened, NIPTA produced a video, which are snippets of from some of the panelists. And I think it just tells the story. 2 minutes long.
The New York Public Transit Association teamed with the Tri-State Transportation Campaign for this year's Transit Advocacy Day at the Renaissance Albany Hotel. The kickoff breakfast featured panels of advocates, lawmakers, and businesses creating jobs because of public transit.
That's a different message from legislators than I've heard in a long time. We've always had support, but the level of support and funding that they're proposing for us this year is very significant.
When we speak with our legislators, it's not just that money that's required to operate services or buy capital, it's the jobs that are created behind that money.
Our members provide 25,000 jobs every single year building the state's transportation system. No one seems to notice that statistic or recognize its importance.
And why it's important to keep public transit vibrant.
There's just so much that needs to be done and not enough funding. So it's really a hunt for the resources.
Even in a good year, we can't do everything. So the question becomes, what's most important? And I think there's a real argument to make for transportation.
Advocates say one new revenue stream would be to implement congestion pricing in Manhattan.
It's a way to provide funding for mass transit to help get the MTA rolling again in a way that we all find acceptable. And it's a way to reduce traffic.
Congestion pricing is only one step, and because of the combination of the congestion in the city, which has increased, and the need to do more, this has to be on the table, and I think most of the members are now recognizing that.
I think we've never had the opportunity that we have right now with the governor working on the MTA, upstate legislators in the Assembly and the Senate who control the transportation committees. So I think getting to a statewide solution for this problem is our best chance we've had in a long time.
I believe we're into a new era and that this is a real opportunity for mass transit to step it up. We're going to have to help mass transit do that.
So I think that really captures about an hour and a half. And then the theme of the 2 days. I think Dave's comments were spot on. I've been doing this for a long time. It's a different balance. It helps also to have chairs of the Transportation Committee be from Buffalo and Syracuse. It does add, and 2 others, the Senator and Assembly woman, are from downstate. So there's a nice balance, but there's a realization that there's life upstate as far as transit is concerned, and it needs to be funded, just like the MTA needs to be funded. I don't know if you had any other thoughts on that, Dave.
No, I thought I thought the panels were great. Attendance was good. I don't know how many people in the room, but the tables all seemed to be filled. And it seemed like a good mix of people.
Yeah, it's as you can tell from the speakers, people who spoke on the video, just a totally different level of support. You know, the stakeholders. I mean, some of you, I had no idea who they were, nor who their organizations were until I looked up, you know, the organizations. I got that. You know, a lot of downstate advocates. These are people who work full time on this. These are not community volunteers. These are people who are you know, working on behalf of transit all the time. So we've really stepped it up in that regard. I think we have a lot more respectability at the Capitol, which, you know, we spent the last 5 years cleaning up our image. I think the results are showing now. So I think that pretty much summarizes advocacy. It will continue through March. You know, March also, you know, we'll talk a little bit more on the federal level. APTA's legislative days are middle of the month. Dave and I and Lisa and Chris Desney met with Congressman Taco last week. And it was one of our better meetings with the congressman. I think he was as engaged as we've seen him. And Lisa, I think, charted for him, you know, some of the things that we really need him to focus his attention on. And you know, because of politics now, I think he actually can help us as a stronger voice. So we left him with some things to think about, and we'll follow up. You know, not the least of which is, you know, potentially expanding into his home county. You know, born, raised, and still lives in the city of Amsterdam. So that obviously caught his attention, and hopefully he can be helpful to us there. At the same time, we continue in our advocacy efforts, and back here at the mothership, continue to advance the electric bus pilot. You know, electric buses have become the buzz at our state capitol, with people seeing it as an opportunity for us now to move the state forward. And I think we at CDTA are leading the way. We're the first system upstate to purchase buses. I know, obviously because of that, the first system upstate to have electric buses. We're expecting them in July, August or so. Chris and Lance and their respective staffs are working on the infrastructure part of it. That's not going as quickly, but it will be ready come heck or high water in June or July. You know, so we're able to charge the vehicles and then engage in the pilot. You know, what is, and you know, the big question is what's the range? You know, how far can you go? How do the batteries drain? You know, things of that nature. But we have the right people here to be on the forefront of this initiative. People are watching us. We're already being engaged in discussions to move from 4 to 24 quickly. And as I've indicated, and Lisa Morello has indicated to people who are asking us that question, if you're willing to fund it, you know, we're willing to listen. The problem right now, the only issue we have is a lot of people want to fund electric vehicles, but they only want to fund the Delta. They only want to fund, you know, the difference between about $425,000 and $925,000. That price will come down, but that's not really helping us. We've been engaged in some discussions now where perhaps people are now enamored with our purchase process, our cycle, the fact that we don't replace large numbers, that we do 12 or 15 a year. That's gotten some attention because they see a smaller number. But what I have indicated, and Lisa continues to indicate, we can't give you that purchase cycle. You can't only be in for the Delta. If you really want to help us, you have to be in for everything. So film at 11, but it's sort of an undercurrent now at the Capitol, and everyone seems to be racing to get a plan together. Luckily, you know, our plan's not completely solid, but we have the closest thing to a plan. I think it puts us in pretty good shape. Montgomery County, no new news. We met with the county executive 2 weeks ago. He is engaged and now working with his legislature. In a perfect world, there was a formal ask to join. We haven't gotten that yet. I think they're working on that. But at the end of the day, the big question mark is paying for the service required. We developed a draft plan. It's rich. It's an all-in. It's an all-in plan. It can be scaled back, but it can't be scaled back to the point. Right now, the available funding is about this much, and the need is about that much. So we need to balance that out. That will likely be a post-budget item. Although there was a discussion yesterday about it being a budget item. In a perfect world, it was a budget item. It was memorialized, and we could be done with it. But we maybe have to be prepared to sort of dribble both ways.
Carl, what's the process though? I mean, we haven't had a formal ask. So will they fund something that we haven't even really been formally asked to do?
Believe it or not, yeah, both sides are moving. One side's moving faster than the other, but the formal ask has to be had, and that's what's being worked on now. In my perfect world, the ask would be here, and we're asked to do
They
this.
have to opt in, so
They have to opt
take
in.
some action.
We need, at the end of the day, an act of the county legislature to formally request to join the authority. It's all set up, they're in enabling legislation, they're named. It would be a relatively easy process once that's completed. That's probably the easier part. The financial part, I think in all full transparency, I don't know how, I couldn't recommend to the board, nor would I want you to take action on something that is financially out of whack. And that's really what we have indicated to the legislative delegation, second floor, and the county. They understand that right now. So several things are being worked on at one time.
And Congress.
And the Congress. We're very clear with it. Right now, for us to provide the level of service we think is necessary to be meaningful, the funding sources aren't even close. Not sure which way you all come in, but our work downstairs continues. We had a small hiccup. This is a long, complicated sort of an OGS is the permitting agency for CDTA. We don't get building permits, for example, from the city of Albany. For board members, well, there's only one now for board members that lived through the construction of the rail station over in Rensselaer. It was an issue, but we didn't have the permit, so the work had to stop. Chris lived this for the last week and a half. Work stopped. The permit was issued today or yesterday. So work. Well, now you have to get the contractor back. For those of you in the construction business, you understand that may be the hard one. But we were on schedule. Actually, maybe even a bit ahead of schedule. But people are living in it's a tough condition right now. It's a lot of noise. Sometimes you hear they'll start tugging on wires or something. You hear it up here. Well, they hear it right down on the drivers from the floor, dispatchers. Some of the superintendent of the division is literally in a room right outside the construction. So we want to get it done as soon as possible. It'll be a few months at least before we get to stages where people see the end product. But so far, so good. The community engagement activities, just bring your attention to March 23rd is our annual awards dinner. We're going to move down to the Capitol Center. We're going to try that. We've been involved in a number of events down there, but we're going to bring the employee awards and 350 people down there. That's a Saturday evening. And state of CDTA is tentatively set for March 26th. And if you don't know what the Bull Moose Club is, the Bull Moose Club is right across the street from the Capitol. And it's a gathering spot. It's owned and operated by Tom Nardaci, Gramercy Corporation. Gramercy does a lot of our crisis PR work and consultants. And he owns the Troy Innovation Garage right across the street from hopefully soon to be Transit Center. No news on that. I'm just being optimistic. but the Bull Moose Club is a similar place. It's become a hot spot for political conferences. They have a monthly session. Tom DiNapoli just spoke. Al D'Amato was there recently. So it's an interesting place. We're going to give that a try. So write those dates down. And on the meetings, just a couple of point out. Bob Sears was kind enough to arrange a meeting between us and Eric Hawkins, who is the new police chief in Albany. Eric comes from Detroit, actually, I think it's Pontiac, a suburb of Detroit. But we talked about, we brought him up to speed really on some of the things that we've done together in our working relationship. And, frankly, our relationship with the Albany Police Department is especially for the folks in operations, pretty critical. Eric pledged full support, seemed to understand, the importance of it, what we do, understood, who we are, and, we offered any help that we could give him in his transition into a community, and it's tough. He's a guy from the outside coming into an organization, full of insiders. So he's got his work cut out for him, and anything we can do to help him, we will do that. We talked about the congressman's visit. By the way, at the APTA legislative meeting, I doubt there are going to be a whole lot of legislative visits. Congress is not in session. Sometimes that's the way things line up. However, we are going to try to get a meeting with Senator Schumer's new transportation director. Transportation Director Nick Dimitri had been with him for a number of years, has moved on, and his replacement I've talked to a couple times on the phone. Very experienced, but we'd like to get a couple of minutes with him to outline, some of our important projects like funding for our BRT projects, which are down there in the pipeline. So, but the APTA Ledge conference, I think, is, if not the best, one of APTA's best offerings, independent of the visits. It's just always been, the sessions are good. There's a lot of people from the Hill who come down and talk with us about issues. And oftentimes, kind of looking a little ahead of the immediate issue, which is always helpful. So there's a lot going on. I didn't talk much about a lot of our projects and activities because during this time of the year I leave it in the capable hands of the people sitting around the table who basically keep the place humming as long as I stay out of their way. But I'm kind of a one-trick pony at this time of the year, and you kind of have to keep your eye on it because things change, or you need a one-pager on this, or you need a one-pager on that. It's probably the one thing I do pretty well. I can bang out a one-pager. It's about the limit. But it's a lot of fun. I kind of really look forward to this time of year. Questions? If you have any questions along the way, you hear something, you read something. There was an article this morning about rental cars and how that will work. Rental car fee would funnel to CDTA, and coincidentally, it's the same number we need to get us to 5.3%, which obviously is not enough to get us to 10. So, if you have any questions about how all those things will work, just give me a buzz.
Thank you.
I didn't catch the time of the Bull Moose Club event, State of CDTA on the 26th.
Mark, it'll be an early morning, but we probably 7:30, 8 o'clock. We haven't zeroed it in yet. That audience is, you have to get them on their way to work, literally. That's it for me.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, going into the good of the order, discussion on amending board meeting minutes from the December 12th, 2018 board meeting. The minutes from the December 12th meeting from the October 31st board meeting.
Yeah, Corey raised a point at the end of the meeting in December, very end of the meeting, there was a quick exchange. Corey talked about the executive session process. If you remember, when we approved the collective bargaining agreement, as often happens to us, the board went into executive session, came out of executive session. We did not, at that point, come back and formally approve the CBA. I mean, the intention was there. We approved it, but we didn't take that. We didn't separate the two steps. The minutes didn't reflect that, so we'll make a correction to reflect that. And probably more importantly, at that time, Corey expressed his thanks to the collective teams, both teams, for their work in getting us to the point where a collective bargaining agreement was approved by both sides. So, and Dave, I think during part of that, Vanessa and I went back and looked at. It's great now. You just go back and look at the videotape. And Dave seconded that. So we'll just insert language in the December minutes.
Do you want me to read that so members are clear on what it says? So the two bullets would say, Corey Bixby made a comment on the approval of the amalgamation agreement on October 31st, 2018. There were hopes that the board would come out of executive session to hold a public vote to approve the new agreement between CDTA and the ATU, noting that a significant amount of work went into the negotiations. He thanks CDTA and the ATU team for coming to an agreement that benefits the employees and their families. Dave Stackgrove followed Mr. Bixby's comment in agreement. So those are the two bullets that would be amended to the December 12th, 2018 minutes. So,
before you,
yeah.
I would just like to say thank you for the board for reviewing this and whatever your decision is, but I appreciate you taking it up since I don't have the ability to make a motion to
So do you need a motion then to
Yes.
Accept the amendment? I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Comments? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries. Motion is approved. All right, we do have executive session at this time. We'd like to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiations with the ATU Local 1321. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. I'll second. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm going to ask Vanessa to stay because we ought to, we're required to have minutes of what happens in executive session. Thank you. Sworn to sit right.
Close up.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. Do you want it back?
No, thank you.
No, I'm gonna do it for you. You might, it's the same screen, yeah. Watch, show me how to do this.
I know. It's such a waste. We should just go have a opposite effects, essentially.
moved.
So we are back in session. During executive session, we discussed the negotiations with the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1321. No action was taken. Now we seek a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the amendment of the collective bargaining agreement and endorsing the negotiated memorandum of understanding between the company and the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1321. Thank you, Mr. Sacra.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Figueroa. Discussion. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Carries. Resolution 04-2019, authorizing the amendment of the collective bargaining agreement and endorsing the negotiated memorandum of understanding between the company and the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1321 is approved.
Someone who's there will have to sign it on my behalf, because I'm physically not present.
Will do.
Thank you. All right, upcoming meetings are Wednesday, March 27th at noon here at 110 Watervliet Avenue, and also Wednesday, April 24th at noon here at 110 Watervliet Avenue in Albany. Do we have anything else? Okay, seek motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you all for coming and for your time.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
I wanted to ask you,
Carol, Mark.
the date set for the April meeting
Thank you for accommodating.
would be on Good Friday.
Of course, take care.
Yeah, that's what I was
Okay,
asking.
yeah.
Looking at the calendar and then
I
Friday.
think it probably
Yeah.
was scheduled for the 19th.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, that's like probably good. I'll, touch base with everybody.
Yeah, I mean,
To
it's
move it to.
preferable not, but I can manage it, so I'm just asking.
In the morning.
Yeah, just